Hello. Did you notice the difference? Hello. It's all in the switch. Hello. Yeah. I'll tell you what. It is so easy for me to get sidetracked. You had me on the brink of going down a bunny trail already. Having to do with the switch and the power being on and things like that. And that's a whole other sermon for another day. I noticed while we had the VBS group doing their presentation, I'm just kind of curious, how many folks are here today 7 years old or under? If you're 7 or under, would you raise your hand for me? Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I see. Thank you. I see that hand. Brother, yes, he's still waving. He's probably about what, 1? 1? Yeah, good guess. I have a brand new grandson who is less than 1 day old. I spent yesterday afternoon and evening over at the Hershey Medical Center. Things did not go as smoothly for my daughter-in-law as what we had prayed for and hoped. So things took longer, and from the text I got this morning, I think she's doing okay, but my grandson is healthy, near as we can tell. And so little Gabriel entered the world yesterday and took his first intakes of air. And we are grateful and thankful. That makes number 4 for us. Now, it took him a while to get here, and I didn't know if there would be any more after the first 3. They range in age from 8 to 14, split between 2 other children. But my youngest son and his wife just became parents for the first time yesterday, and we're pretty excited about that, to tell you the truth. Since it has been 8 years since the last one, that's a pretty good gap. Now, I'm really hoping that it's not 8 years till the next one, but, you know, who of us can predict those kind of things? And even though I had given him fair warning just moments ago, I'll bet you that Joe Martin is not realizing he's about to speak. Joe, get back! No. I thought it'd be fun. He assumed I was going to speak, and I said, don't assume anything. Maybe I'll call you up and have you speak. How many of you would like to hear Joe speak this morning? Okay, other than you 10. The reason I asked about the 7-year-olds and under is because that's how long it's been since I last spoke here at Antrim. It was April 2016, the last time that I brought the message. So that's a long time for a bishop to not be in the pulpit or whatever. And I thought I'd give you some background to that about why that took place. There were many, many reasons. Maybe not many, but many. And I just want to highlight 2 to let you know where I've been, what I've been doing, how things have pivoted just in the last week or 2. 2018, 2 years after I was last here, was a kind of pivotal year for the Allegheny Conference. And it was a very challenging year for me and many of the congregations. In 2018, there were probably no less than 6, maybe 7 congregations on the brink of closure or departure and leaving the brethren in Christ. And out of all that, just to give you the quick bottom line, we did close 1 congregation, and there were 2 where the bulk of the congregations walked away and left us with just a remnant of the previous congregation. But other than that, many of those situations, the Lord worked in our, midst, and we had some good, productive, fruitful kinds of resolutions, and we did get kind of creative and inventive. But the deal is that in those years, 2018, 2019, and then of course 2020 was COVID and so forth, I was trying to do what I normally do and give attention to all the congregations as they had need. But I also took on the congregation in Altoona and became the interim pastor at Spring of Hope Church. And that has continued up until last week. Now, I wasn't there every week. Of course, sometimes you just have to do things and get out. But all of those gaps when I would normally be just going around to visit or just going around to share something, I was in Altoona with a little congregation of between week to week, 8 to 12 people. And some people would say, well, that doesn't seem like a very good use of the bishop's time. But on the other hand, I felt very strongly that this was what God wanted me doing. And God supplied a couple of miracles along the way just to sort of solidify that in me. And last week, I said it was a pivot point. That congregation was 300. Just in a week's time. Now, there was a couple of months of preparation, but what happened was that a group of people, most of them, the vast majority of them, United Methodists formerly, who disaffiliated with congregations that stayed united, have bonded together and formed a congregation called The Well, and we began to work together and partner together. And so now, as of last Sunday, we have The Well at Spring of Hope with the two congregations combined. And the way I put it a month or two ago to a group that had assembled was, hey, this seems to be like God has had us in preparation for this day for a long time. And there were many times I was I liked the little song. I was called crazy, crazy. What are you doing? You're crazy. And that's happened several times, not just there, but other things. And sometimes I am a little crazy, but I'm happy. Let me alone. Anyway, I said to this assembled group, I said, here's the deal. You have a pastor and a congregation that's formed. I happen to have a building that needs a pastor and congregation. I really think this should work. And so as of last week, I am no longer the interim pastor at Spring of Hope Church, but I think really probably they have more than 300 this morning, and they will likely continue to grow. And I was like, I think for just such a time as this, it's like Esther and kingdom-minded, those things, that's what's going on up there. The second reason that I think you haven't seen me in 7 years here as far as the platform, I mean, I've been in and out of the building multiple times, many times, but I haven't been here to preach, is that I think, in my opinion, we have enjoyed a decade of really good ministry and leadership here at Antrim. It's been excellent. And so by my count, as I said, my perspective is that this congregation has enjoyed roughly a decade of stability and fruitfulness, and you are blessed to have some very capable, quality individuals in your leadership. The people running the ship, I think, are tremendous. And I just want to bless them and give public acknowledgement to that. And so since I'm here this morning, in some small way, hopefully contributing to Pastor Adam's sustainability, and by sustainability, I mean being here long term for years to come, I let my presence be clear. I just want it to be clearly understood that this is an affirmation that I love him, I support him, and I'll be very glad if he is here into the future. And so I fully, we've been in touch consistently, and I fully anticipate that he is going to return to his duties here more robust, more capable, just better than ever, more fruitful than ever. So, as Well, I'm glad you kind of feel that way. That's good. As I mentioned, I spent the last 4 years preaching most of the time in the same congregation. And while I was doing that, I would preach message series. And recently, my series has been focused on just telling the Bible stories. The narratives that many of us grew up with in Sunday school or having been taught at home, the biggies like creation, Adam and Eve, the fall, and then the flood, Noah and Abraham beyond. And I was working my way forward, and I thought, well, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to jump all the way into the New Testament for this morning. And my story is going to be Lazarus, and tell the story of Lazarus. So anyway, when I've been doing these stories, Bible stories, I just ask 3 questions. 1, what happened? 2, why did it happen? And 3, where do we go from here? And the reason I've been doing that is because it's been my observation now for quite a while, and by that I mean a couple of decades, that people don't know the stories. The ones that I think everybody knows this story. Everybody knows creation story, Adam and Eve, and everybody knows about the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Everybody, whether you're Christian or not, you know the story. No, you don't. I've discovered that even in our churches and in our chairs and pews, many people don't know the Bible stories. And if you need a little bit of evidence of that, I submit that the recent episode of Jeopardy, where the contestants, none of them knew the word hallowed from the Lord's Prayer. They just kind of sat and stared. I don't know if you saw that. It was all over Google and news media and things like that, and created a certain amount of brouhaha, but not everybody's seen it. I had some folks from the earlier service make mention, is that real? Did that really happen? Well, yeah. I don't generally go around and make up stories like this. So what happened in the episode was I don't even know the lady's name that moderates, took over for Alex Trebek, but whoever she is, $200 question. And that's an easy one, right? The 200 rack. So flip, our Father which art in heaven, be thy name. They didn't know. Now, these are very, very intelligent people, but they didn't know. I think for us to go through life with an assumption that people know the Bible stories, even the most basic Bible stories, is a bad assumption. And I try and do my best at home, in the church, or wherever I have an opportunity to tell the stories. And the reason I've been doing that is because people don't know. In an era of information overload, the foundational biblical narrative's getting lost. You can't take it as just a cultural norm that people understand, well, the Bible says, because they don't know. For a word from the scriptures then, let's turn to John chapter 11 and the first 44 verses, the story of Lazarus. It's kind of lengthy, but it's the story. And for the first point or part, whatever you want to call it, what happened? So I'm not going to comment on it. I'm not going to interject anything. I'm just simply going to read the Bible story. John 11, 1 to 44 says this. Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was the Martha who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. So the sisters sent word to him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom you love is sick. But when Jesus heard this, he said, this sickness is not to end in death, but for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified by it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was sick, he then stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to the disciples, let's go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and you're going there again? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him. This he said, and after that he said to them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go so that I may awaken him out of sleep. The disciples then said to him, Lord, if he's fallen asleep, he'll recover. Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought he was speaking of literal sleep. So Jesus then said to them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and I'm glad for your sakes that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. Therefore Thomas, who's called Didymus, said to his fellow disciples, let us also go, so that we may die with him. So when Jesus came, he found that he had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off. And many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. Martha, therefore, when she heard that Jesus was coming, went to meet him. But Mary stayed at the house. Martha then said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. And Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even though he dies. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, yes, Lord. I have believed that you are the Christ, the Son of God, even he who comes into the world. When she had said this, she went away and called Mary her sister, saying secretly, the teacher is here and is calling for you. And when she heard it, she got up quickly and was coming to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha met him. Then the Jews who were with her in the house and consoling her, when they saw that Mary got up quickly and went out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there. Therefore, when Mary came where Jesus was, she saw him and fell at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and was troubled, and said, where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. So the Jews were saying, see how he loved him? But some of them said, could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man also from dying? So Jesus, again, being deeply moved within, came to the tomb. Now it was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, remove the stone. Martha, the sister of the deceased, said to him, Lord, by this time there will be a stench, for he's been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, did I not say to you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they removed the stone. Then Jesus raised his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you've heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But because of the people standing around, I said it, so that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. The man who had died came forth, bound hand and foot with wrappings, and his face was wrapped around with a cloth. Jesus said to them, unbind him and let him go. Therefore many of the Jews who came to Mary and saw what he had done believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them the things which Jesus had done. There you have it, the facts. Some of you are old enough to remember the television show Dragnet, and how Sergeant Joe Friday would go around and collect information, do investigation. And we people, we like to embellish things and add commentary. And Joe often at the door would say, the facts, ma'am, just the facts. So there's the story. That's just the facts. And facts, I believe they are. I believe it's real. I believe it's real people in real place, real time, really happened. I believe there was real sickness, real grief, real death. I believe that there was real conversations. I believe that real people were engaged in ministry and the consoling that we read about here. I believe there was real resurrection, and that a dead man after 4 days came forth and they unwrapped him. I believe it. Same with the other stories that I read. I believe it. But why did it happen? It doesn't really make sense. all the way through the narrative, you see it peppered, or you hear it peppered with the question or the observation or some interjection that says, you had the power to keep this from happening, and you didn't act. And that's why we're grieving. There's almost an accusation embedded in there where the sisters, and these people all love each other. They're tight. But where were you? Where were you when? When I needed you, you weren't here. Why were you so long in coming? And on Jesus' end, it seems very intentional and deliberate, because he makes it plain to the disciples after giving them a very kind of cryptic response or cryptic answer. Then he makes it very plain. He's dead. Now let's stay here 2 more days. What, right? Make sense? No, it doesn't make sense. But something else is happening. Much of the story simply leaves us with more questions than answers. And Jesus' answers, as I mentioned, are often like much of his teaching. It's not plain. It's cryptic. And yet he goes to say, you know what? If you have the light, you can see what I'm talking about. And I'm not talking about just the natural sunlight, but I'm talking about if you have the light of the sun, S-O-N, you can see, you can understand. And he's providing insight into the kingdom, insight into himself, insight into why things unfolded the way that they did. And he says that fairly plainly. It's so that they might believe. Believe in the resurrection. And the resurrection here is capital R. Jesus saying, I am the resurrection. Believe in me. Believe. Believe that death is not the end. Believe that suffering is not the final answer. Believe that there's redemption. Believe in me. Real ministry, real resurrection, real person, sent from God, real loving, real deliverer. And this whole business of the resurrection, to deny the resurrection is to deny Jesus, the resurrection. If you deny that there's a resurrection, you deny the existence of the resurrection. Life, real life, Jesus. And as far as I know, as far as all of my study and research can tell, this is the only time Jesus ever corrected a doctrine. And it's because the Sadducees were a group of folks in his time who believed that there was no life after death. And they tried to trap him in that, and they created this artificial scenario where they figured they had him pinned into a corner based on the law. And Jesus plainly looks at them and says, on this matter, you are wrong. You are mistaken. You've missed it. And it had everything to do with the resurrection, and Jesus corrected them on it. There is life after death. God is the God of the living, not the dead. He's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, your forefathers. The resurrection, and you need to know the resurrection. Because life entails suffering. Life entails challenges. It's going to be there. And, well, deal with it. Now, that phrase, deal with it, is often used by people who are kind of getting in your face with their own steely, like, hey, there it is, deal with it. I don't want to use it that way this morning. I want to say, we are going to, as human beings, we are going to suffer. Deal with it. Proactively, positively, deal with it. Don't hide from it. Don't run from it. Don't try and pretend that there's going to be some place that you can create where you will never experience it. Because if you've lived at all and your life has been suffering free, tell me tell me how that works. That's not been my experience. Not at all. And I think it's by God's design. It's on purpose. I know it's something that God uses in our lives for our strengthening and for His glory. Jesus said that Lazarus died so that there would be an opportunity for him to demonstrate the power of the resurrection. And in demonstrating the power of the resurrection, people could believe and believe in him and rightfully worship him. I know that suffering can be the tool that God uses to perfect righteousness in us. There are times when it can be a consequence of bad behavior or a consequence of sin, and you get what you deserve. And Peter talks about that you know what? If you're suffering for wrongdoing, you're just getting the consequences, what you deserve. But if you're suffering for righteousness' sake, trust God. Trust God that God works all things together for good. Trust God that there is a resurrection, there is an out. Because death is painted in the scriptures as the final enemy. It's the big deal. And we're all going to die once, but we don't have to die twice. We are going to die. You're going to die. I'm going to die. Mortality rate currently runs at 100%. You can go ahead and Google that. It's a fact. Even if we were able to create the perfect safe space where we didn't have to suffer one thing, still going to die. God has decreed it. Death still awaits. So prepare for it. So how do we deal with it? How do we handle these things, whatever they might be? And, sometimes when it comes down to suffering, and I'm talking about not only physical pain or things like that, or it can be the emotional pain like grief. I talked about Lazarus' sisters and friends, and Jesus wept. Jesus has experienced all these things. Hebrews says that even the Son of Man learned obedience through suffering. Jesus suffered emotionally as well as physically, mentally. And sometimes, this teaching that God does through suffering, it doesn't even have to be our own suffering. If we're smart, if we're wise, if we have eyes to see and ears to hear, we can learn from other people's suffering while they're suffering. We empathize with them. This morning after the early service, I was chatting a bit with Steve and Bonnie Westbury, for those of you who know who they are. And I told him, I said, it's the weirdest thing, Steve. I knew you in Tim's and all of this stuff even before Priority One, and my daughter went on one of the short-term trips and all that. I said, I don't remember you for any of that, but I think about you often. I said, because I remember when you got in a head-on collision at your mailbox. He had driven on the opposite side of the road to get the mail out of the mailbox, and car hit him head-on, banged him up pretty good for a while. And I said, I live in the rural hills south of Bedford, and my mailbox is roughly about a third of a mile from my house, and it's just very convenient sometimes when I'm pulling up to pull on the opposite side of the road to grab the mail. And I said, then I pull across to my driveway because I remember Steve Westbury took it on the chin. I learned from your suffering. And that's just simply an example or a metaphor for life and how suffering can be beneficial even if it's not even when it's not our own. So where do we go from here? What do? We live the resurrected life now. The power of the resurrection, Jesus, the resurrection in us now. And we learn often through suffering, but we learn through various avenues that God uses that the spiritual life is always going to be nonsense to the natural mind. It's incomprehensible to the natural mind. The rational mind just cannot pull together and piece together the truth of the spiritual realm. I mentioned that yesterday we received another grandchild. my wife and I, continue to marvel at the miracle of reproduction and life and giving birth to another living person, another human being with a name and a future. It's amazing. Really, truly a wow. But then I tell folks, I say, now, if you had no idea, and here I'm just going to paint with a broad brush, I'll put it that way. Every creature on this planet that reproduces with live birth, so we could be talking dog, cat, cow, camel, whatever. If you didn't know how that worked, and I said, there's another living being inside of this living being, just like this living being, but not precisely the same. It's the same but different. And that living being that's inside of this other living being is going to make an exit. You say, okay, how? And I tell you, this is how. You going to believe me? If you've never seen it or experienced it? Ain't happening. My mind can't wrap around the fact of all this taking place here and that it's even physically possible for something like this to occur. And if that's the case with the physical, how about in the spiritual? And Jesus talking to Nicodemus. Well, Nicodemus, when we get right down to it, you must be born again. You can feel the gears trying to mesh. I must be born again? I mean, can I enter again into my mother's womb? How's that work? Well, you have to be born of the water and of the Spirit. I'm really trying to stick with you here, teacher. What are you talking about? Well, you know, the wind blows where the wind blows. You don't see it, but you can feel its effects. You can see its effects. Yeah, keep going. Well, what I'm really getting to is, I am the resurrection. I am life. I've come. You know, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy, but I've come so that you might have life and have it to the full, so that you can live with eternity in your heart. You okay? Nicodemus, where were you last night? Never mind. It's a long story. Pretty weird. But for those who have experienced, tasted, and seen, and invited Jesus in by faith, it's reality. And when Jesus comes, he said, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. In other words, we got to die to live. You hear me? It's all part of that upside down thing, that inside out. So if anybody seeks to save his life, he's going to lose it. Anybody willing to lose their life, they're going to find it. It's spiritual stuff, but it's real, very real. And that's where we need to live. We need to live in the resurrection and the resurrection in us. And we need to embrace the mystery. Accept that the way of the cross includes suffering. Sometimes unjustly, as I said. And we take up our cross and we die to self. That's a theme throughout. But being living dead people is what God has called us to be. Die to this realm and live in the next, alive in Christ. I think that's what the Apostle Paul was talking about. when he said, I die daily. I put to death the misdeeds of the body. The life I now live, I live in Christ. It's, I'm a living sacrifice. On and on and on it goes. This is who we're called to be. Living dead people. So, learn to ask in all situations, does this matter to a dead man? Because we're dead to self, alive to Christ. And many years ago, 40 years ago or so, I was in a Nazarene church. It was revival time, and the evangelist, blind guy, had a great dog. Dog's name was Barnabas, golden retriever. And this gent preaching one evening, he said, does it matter to a dead man? Does it matter to a dead man? I've been using that phrase with myself and other people ever since things happened. Does it matter to a dead man? And in his case, when he preached, he was using an illustration. He said, let's say I'm stretched out in the coffin. You wave $1 million under my nose. Does that matter to a dead man? Let's say you call me names. Does that matter to a dead man? And to bring it more home, I heard it put differently when my son was playing baseball, and there was a fellow on the team, and he would always say, when something would happen and you just wanted to go, "Ugh!" He'd go, is that going to matter when the trumpet sounds? So he had one day something happen to him, and I happened to be standing close enough, and I could tell he was upset. And, sometimes a guy will take a bat and kind of whack the ground with it, and he was on his way to first base. And I said, is that going to matter when the trumpet sounds? That's how we develop sanctification, And I think you'll find if you work through some of the questions that I put for later in the week and pondering some of these things. How do we live this life, this resurrected life, that even though we suffer, that's not the final word? And based on what Jason was saying a little bit this morning and knowing that I was coming up, I so badly wanted to come up and just start with, it's Friday! Some of you know the sermon. But Sunday's coming. Tony Campolo, decades ago. Hear the story, hilarious story, but a great truth. On Friday, things look pretty dark and dismal, but Sunday's coming. Well, we live in Sunday. It's Easter every day for us as believers.